Berlin, April 1945. The city was already dying, its streets choked with rubble, its skies black with smoke. The Third Reich was in its final, desperate breaths. But for the soldiers still holding the line, one more nightmare was about to arrive. It did not sneak in under cover of night. It came openly, brazenly, down the wide boulevards and narrow streets, its massive silhouette cutting through the haze. The sound came first, deep, guttural, like some great beast clearing its throat. Then the shape emerged. A tank, if one could still call it that, loomed larger than any they had seen. Its armor was thick enough to shrug off most German shells, its gun long enough to tear through concrete and steel as if they were paper. This was the IS-2, the hammer of Joseph Stalin. It was not designed merely to fight other tanks. It was built to break cities, to smash the last strongholds of the enemy, and to send a message. There would be no fortress safe enough, no street wide enough to stop the Red Army now. In the final days of the Reich, it was not just the red banner that struck fear into German hearts. It was the shadow of the steel beast rolling toward them. The birth of the IS-2 was not a matter of prestige, it was a matter of survival. In 1943, the Eastern Front was bleeding the Soviet Union dry. German Tiger, their Furs, and Panther tanks were punching through Soviet armor with terrifying efficiency. Each clash cost the Red Army lives, machines, and territory it could no longer afford to lose. The answer had to be more than a counter. It had to be a statement. Soviet engineers at the Chelyabinsk-Kirov plant were given a single directive: build a tank that could not only face the Tigers, but crush them on open fields, in forests, and through the walls of cities. The result was the IS-2, named after Joseph Stalin himself. Its armor was sloped and thick, deflecting shells that would have gutted any T-34. Its 122mm D-25T gun fired shells that could tear the turret off a Tiger or reduce a concrete bunker to dust. But the IS-2 was more than steel and firepower. It was mobility for a heavy tank, able to maneuver in tight urban streets where the Germans believed themselves safe. It was the promise that Soviet offensives would no longer stall at fortified lines. They would smash through them. In the factories of the Urals, under the roar of furnaces and the sparks of welding torches, the beast of Berlin was forged. And soon the world would hear it coming. The IS-2 was not a weapon built for subtlety. Its heart was the 122mm D-25T gun, one of the most powerful tank-mounted cannons of the war. Firing a 25-kilogram shell at over 780 meters per second, it could punch through 120 millimeters of armor at a kilometer's range. For a Tiger Eye or a Panther, that meant a quick, brutal end. But the true terror of the IS-2 was not just what it could do to enemy tanks. It was what it could do to everything else. That same gun could level a building with a single shot. German defensive bunkers, painstakingly reinforced with concrete and steel, crumbled in seconds under its fire. Its long reload time, up to 25 seconds, might have been a weakness in duels. But the Soviets didn't send the IS-2 to fight alone. It advanced with infantry, self-propelled guns, and supporting tanks, ensuring that each devastating shot was delivered under cover. For the soldiers on the receiving end, the sound of that 122mm round leaving the barrel was unforgettable. It wasn't a crack. It was a deep, concussive boom that seemed to shake the air itself. German memoirs often speak of it not as a gun, but as a hammer, a single, earth-shattering blow that could change the outcome of a battle. In the ruins of cities and on the open steppe, the IS-2's firepower became a promise. Resistance would not just be broken, it would be erased. By early 1945, the Red Army's eyes were fixed on Berlin. The path was not a straight line. It wound through frozen rivers, entrenched defenses, and the last desperate stands of a collapsing Reich. At the tip of the spear were the IS-2 heavy tanks, leading the armored columns that would carve open the road to the German capital. In January, during the Vistula-Oder offensive, IS-2 units smashed through fortified positions along the river lines, breaking the back of German defenses in Poland. Their armor shrugged off enemy fire as they advanced, their 122mm guns silencing strong points one by one. By April, the Battle of Seelow Heights, the last major defensive line before Berlin, was underway. The Germans had dug in deep, turning the high ground into a fortress. But the IS-2 was built for exactly this. Shell after shell tore into bunkers and gun emplacements, while Soviet infantry moved in the wake of the destruction. For the Germans, each silhouette on the horizon meant the same thing. The Red Army was coming, and nothing could stop it now. For the Soviets, the sight of IS-2s advancing under the red banner was a promise that the war's end was within reach. From the Vistula to the Oder, from the Oder to the streets of Berlin, the IS-2 was more than just a tank. It was the steel vanguard of a final, unstoppable march. Berlin was not a battlefield. It was a maze of ruins, fire, and desperation. For the IS-2 crews, every street was a potential killing ground. Snipers hid in shattered windows, Panzerfaust teams lurked in alleyways, and rubble blocked easy paths. But the IS-2 was built for this. Moving slowly, its treads crushed bricks and twisted steel underfoot. The 122mm gun roared, tearing holes into fortified buildings where German machine guns had pinned down Soviet infantry. One shot could erase an entire firing position, sending clouds of dust and splintered masonry into the air. The tank commanders worked in concert with assault squads, using the IS-2 as a moving wall of armor. Infantry advanced tight to its sides, shielded from fire until the moment to strike. In return, the soldiers guarded the beast from close-range ambushes, ensuring no enemy with a Panzerfaust got within reach. For the Germans defending their capital, the sound of an IS-2's engine echoing down a street was the signal to fall back or die in place. The sheer size and power of the machine made it a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. Street by street, block by block, the IS-2 ground its way forward. And with every intersection taken, the shadow of the steel beast fell heavier over the Reichstag itself. By the final days of the battle, the IS-2 had become more than a weapon. It was a legend whispered among the enemy. German soldiers who had once scoffed at Soviet armor now spoke of the heavy tank with a mix of dread and respect. They called it Stalin's hammer, a name that captured both its destructive power and the inevitability of its blows. Reports from the Wehrmacht described the futility of engaging an IS-2 head-on. Panther and Tiger crews were ordered to ambush from the sides or rear, knowing that frontal shots were often wasted. Even then, the risk was immense. One mistake, and the 122mm shell would end the fight before it began. The fear was not just in its armor or its gun, it was in its presence. The silhouette at the end of a street, the deep rumble of its engine, the pause before its cannon fired. These became signals of oncoming destruction. For some Germans, encountering an IS-2 meant retreat. For others, it meant fighting to the last, if only to slow its advance. But none could deny the truth. Wherever the IS-2 appeared, the ground itself seemed to tilt in favor of the Red Army. And in the ruins of Berlin, its reputation was cemented, not as just a Soviet tank, but as the unstoppable beast that heralded the Reich's final fall. When the guns finally fell silent in Berlin, the IS-2 stood not just as a witness to victory, but as one of its architects. Photographs from May 1945 show the heavy tank parked amid the wreckage of the Reich's capital, its paint chipped, its armor scarred, but unbroken. For the men who had served inside, those scars were proof of a job done, and done completely. In the years that followed, the IS-2 remained in service across the Soviet sphere. It was deployed to Eastern Europe, rolled in parades across Red Square, and stationed as a silent deterrent in the early years of the Cold War. For many nations allied with Moscow, the IS-2 was a symbol of Soviet protection and Soviet power. Today, preserved IS-2s stand in museums and memorials, their massive barrels still pointing outward, as if ready for another advance. Visitors walk past them, some in awe, others in reflection, imagining the fear they once inspired. But the true legacy of the IS-2 is more than steel. It is the lesson that in war, power is not only in the weapon's capabilities, but in its presence, its ability to shape the enemy's mind before the battle even begins. And so, in the annals of history, the Beast of Berlin endures, not just as a machine, but as a shadow that once rolled across Europe, heralding the end of an empire. In war, some machines are remembered for their innovation, others for their numbers. The IS-2 is remembered for its presence, an unstoppable force carrying not just shells, but the weight of an empire's will. When it rolled into Berlin, it was more than steel on tracks. It was a declaration that the tide had turned, that the age of the Third Reich was over. For those who faced it, the sight of that massive gun and the rumble of its engine would remain etched in memory long after the fighting had stopped. Today, its shadow lingers in history's pages, a reminder of the moments when technology, strategy, and resolve converged to change the fate of nations. The Beast of Berlin no longer roars, but its story still speaks. And in the chronicles of war, its name stands among the few that need no introduction. If you want more stories like this, legends, forgotten battles, and the machines that shaped history, remember to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to join us for the next Untold chapter.